Alrighty, welcome to the 87th edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com, and I'm joined as always by Jed Meshew of MMAfighting.com and Wes Riddle of MMAsucker.com. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Aces. I don't know. I thought Wes might have something in there.
Usually when I ask you how you're doing, you say something, but I guess we can do it differently. Look, I'm Wes. He didn't.
we have got a ton of fights in the biggest card
so
of the
I don't
year.
care how
I was trying not to get too wordy because sometimes I do that.
Yeah, sometimes you do, and sometimes I come close to falling asleep. So I guess I appreciate the one-word answer sometimes.
Damn. Okay.
I'm just here to rock and roll. I love you guys.
Good. Before we get to UFC 217 goes down this weekend at Madison Square Garden in New York City. We got the return of GSP taking on middleweight champion Michael Bisping and so much more. Before that, let's go back to last weekend. We had a great card, a UFC Fight Night 119 Sao Paulo. Derek Brunson kind of, it saddens the MMA world. He knocks out Lyoto Machida. We also have Colby Covington picking up a win over Damian Maia in the co-main event. Jed, let's get to the results. How do we all do?
Good weekend for you, Nicholas. Good weekend indeed. You are the winner of your R Picks competition. You went 9-3. Good sir. Your misses were Price, who lost to Luque, and then Font and Maya. All three of us missed on Font. Wes went 8-4. He missed on Font. He missed on Maya. He missed on Jack Hermanson, and he missed on Max Griffin. I went 7-5. I missed on Griffin, Hakran Diaz, Jack Hermanson, Font, and Machida. I took a lot of underdogs. I was feeling frisky, and that mostly did not pay off for me. As far as our DraftKings results go, oh, well, looky there, Nicholas. You once again had a good, I guess not once again, but you had a two-time weekend. You are also our DraftKings champion with 399 points. Your big earners were Derek Brunson with that first-round KO, and that was your only three-digit earner. Everybody else, not tremendous results. I'm sorry, no, you also had Thiago Santos, who had 114 points there, and then just whatever else in your team. I'm bringing up second place. I had Vicente Luque brought in 110 points for me, but I was really screwed by Lyoto Machida, who only scored 1.5 points. That really will hurt your squad. Wes Riddle bringing up the rear in the DraftKings with 207 points. Nobody scoring triple digits in points. Really a rough go of things. Picked a lot of guys who ended up not winning. Maya, Machida, Griffin, and Font all were on Wes's team, so unfortunate for you there, Wes. As far as our other contest goes, Fight of the Night, Performance of the Night bonus, and the underdog. Your Fight of the Night was Zaleski dos Santos versus Max Griffin. Your two performances went to Derek Brunson and Pedro Munoz. Is that right? Was it Pedro Munoz? Does anyone know if I'm correct on that?
Yes, correct on that.
Yes, I thought so, but it's a little scribbly where I wrote. And so, congratulations, Wes. Wes picked the Zaleski dos Santos Max Griffin fight as his fight of the night. He had that spot on. Although, I will say I thought that fight should have been stopped by either referee or the corner, but, whatever. Wes gets to take the win there. Wes also sniped Derek Brunson as a performance bonus, so he was a double bonus predictor and wins our bonus competition. And Nicholas, you got Fight of the Night wrong. You changed it like 8 times, and I don't even know who this is. You had Cheeto Vera. John Lineker Cheeto Vera is what you finally changed it to.
Well, I only had 2. I started with who did I start with?
I don't remember. You had Trinaldo Miller.
Yes,
and then
I copied you. Yes.
Yeah. Then Brunson Font were your performances, so you also sniped Brunson. I had Trinaldo Miller, I had Machida, I had Luque. None of those won, though Luque did at least put up a pretty good performance, I will say that. In our underdog picks, I had Lyoto Machida. Obviously, that did not bear fruit. Wes had Max Griffin, also not a winner. And Nicholas had Damian Maia. 3 underdog picks, 3 different picks, 3 different losers. The underdog of the week pick has not worked out for us, but today is another week, and there are a lot of live dogs on this card, so I think we might see some puppies barking.
We will see. Well, let us get on to UFC 217 because it is, of course, one of the best cards of the year. Other than, I guess, UFC 214 and anything else, I don't think so. It's been a pretty quiet year. As I said, we have Michael Bisping versus George St-Pierre in the main event. We have two other title fights, Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight title, and Ioana Jędrzejczyk versus Rose Namajunas for the strawweight title. We will get to that and much more closer to the end of the program, but let us go to the first fight of the night on UFC Fight Pass. Early prelims starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. We have Amin Zahabi taking on Ricardo Ramos in the bantamweight division, 135 pounds. Canadian, what was that? Canada versus Brazil. Jed, who do you got?
I don't know what that was. That's an interesting thing that you had going on there. Give me Ricardo Ramos for a couple of reasons. One, he was the name of my pediatrician growing up, was Ricardo Ramos, so that's fun for me. But two, I think Amin Zahabi can fight a little bit. I think Amin Zahabi might be getting a little bit extra shine just because of his last name and what that means in our particular space. And his debut performance in the UFC was fine. Reginaldo Vieira, I think it was a competitive fight, but I think Amin Zahabi was a judicious winner there. But to me, he's just too slow on the feet. I think this fight's going to take place on the feet, and he maintains his range pretty well, but he is not quick, and I think that he's pretty hittable. I think Ricardo Ramos is just a faster, better athlete, and I think that'll carry water here. So give me Ricardo Ramos on points.
I'm leaning the same way on this one. Don't really have a whole lot to add. I was a little bit more impressed with Ricardo Ramos's performance over Zahabi's in their debuts. Go ahead.
Against the better guy, Michinori Tanaka is a better fighter than Reginaldo Vieira.
Without a doubt. And just taking a look at this, I do agree with you. Taking a look at the stats as well, Tanaka was able to land a couple takedowns, but Ramos, I remember, quite a bit on the feet. He was able to capitalize quite a bit with a lot of strikes, and he's pretty quick himself. Zahabi actually got outstruck in the fight that he had with Vieira, and Vieira was able to land 2 takedowns, but I think Zahabi was able to take a majority of the rounds because a lot of the strikes that Vieira was landing were round-and-pound strikes, and they weren't too significant. But it was a pretty close fight overall, but I was definitely more impressed with Ramos's performance. I think that Ramos is just a little bit quicker. I'm not sure if Zahabi is going to be able to take this one down to the ground because he is a pretty good wrestler, a decent striker, but I do think that Ramos overall is just a more well-rounded and complete athlete. For that reason, I did pick Ramos by unanimous decision, but I do think this will actually be a pretty exciting fight between two guys that are fairly new here, of course, in the UFC, both only having one fight. This is one I think that you should definitely watch out for, maybe a fight of the night contender, maybe one of those sleeper fights, but I think it'll be a good one to get the card going. I am taking Ricardo Ramos, though, by unanimous decision.
I typically disagree that this is a fight night candidate, but I can't call you wrong just because you also called Max Griffin versus Zaleski dos Santos last weekend, and I again didn't really think that would be fight night. So who am I to say? I mean, you're the bonus master at this point. At least this week you are, Wes. This is an interesting fight. I think it's pretty close. I was leaning Zahabi at first. I feel like though with Amin Zahabi, he's just a bit. He's people look at him and see the last name, and he's almost better than or he appears to be better, or we think he's better than he really is just because of the name and just because he's the brother of Firas Zahabi, one of the best coaches, most renowned coaches in the world. Of course, he's the coach of George St-Pierre, one of the best welterweight of all time, who's headlining tonight or this card. I'm going to lean Ramos. I think he has a few more ways to win. I think on the feet they're close in actual technique, but I think Ramos is actually a bit quicker, as you guys said. Zahabi, his debut wasn't all that impressive. He got a decision win, but I think a lot of people were expecting a bit more from him. Again, maybe it was octagon jitters, but you can't count on that entirely. He looked a bit slow on the feet, and he just didn't look too great overall. I think I actually missed Ramos's debut against Michinori Tanaka. I was on vacation during that card and did not catch it. But from what I've seen from Ramos, he's a bit quicker, and also I think he has the grappling advantage here as well. So give me Ricardo Ramos by close unanimous decision. Next up, we got newcomer Michael Olojuzuk. Oh, that's terrible. Taking on Ion Kutalaba, the Hulk. Jed, are you going to go with Lord, the newcomer from Poland, or the Hulk from the Republic of Moldova?
Oh, you got to give me Moldovan Joel Edgerton all day, every day. You know I'm a big Moldovan Joel Edgerton guy. Not actually, but Miko Oleksiejczuk that's the best I can do here. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm super well versed in Oleksiejczuk here, but I do think I think the Kutalaba is a guy who can and should stick around the UFC. I don't think he's gonna ever go on a title run. I don't think he'll even really probably ever make it, up the ladder into a long-term ranking. I think he might be good enough to kind of hang around in that sort of Brad Tavares area where he gets in and out of the top 15, never really cracks the top 10. But I think Oleksiejczuk, whatever. He's a short notice replacement for somebody, correct? I don't know who. Antigulov, maybe? Was that who this? I feel like this was not.
Yes, you're right. Yep.
Yeah. And as far as I'm aware, he's sort of just getting the call up here because his boy is on the thing. Alexei Oleinik, I believe he trains with Alexei Oleinik, and he's a pretty small dude. I know he's competed at light heavyweight, but it seems like he should really be more of a middleweight. He's got okay striking, I guess, and he's sort of like a middling guy. He can kind of do everything a little bit. He's got some jits on him. I just think he's going to be too small coming in on short notice against a guy who isn't great but is good enough. So, yeah, give me Ion Kutalaba, the Moldovan Joel Edgerton by – what am I feeling here, fellas? We feeling a stoppage? Am I feeling a decision? I think I'm feeling a stoppage. I gotta say, he knocked out Luis Enrique da Silva. He's gonna put some back to back. Give me a round 2 stoppage for Ion Kutalaba.
I was watching a little bit of tape on this Oleksiejczuk man, and he's pretty powerful. The one thing that I noticed though that kind of has leaned me away from picking him is that he tends to rely pretty predominantly on his left hand and only his left hand. Doesn't really throw a lot of right hands unless he's able to get his opponents hurt. But he relies so much on this left hand that he also keeps it fairly low, leaving his chin quite exposed, especially in exchanges. And his opponents usually aren't really throwing a whole lot of volume from some of the tape that I've seen. Ion Kutalaba has quite a bit of stoppages. I think he has like maybe 11 of his however many wins, 13 wins, or maybe less than that. It might be like 9 or 10, but that many underneath, I think, about 71 seconds from a statistic that I saw a couple days ago. It's something along those lines, but Kutalaba has so much power, especially in that right hand, so I'm thinking that if Mikhail keeps his left hand a little bit low, that's going to be able to pretty much open up a hole for Kutalaba to land that right hand. I also think that Kutalaba is a little bit quicker than Oleksiejczuk. And I think that we're going to see Kutalaba land that right hand and possibly put him down because I do think that Oleksiejczuk was hit, or at least not hit, but knocked out once in his career. Kutalaba is still not, I guess, undefeated from getting knocked out. He has lost 2 in the UFC, but they've been the top guys, Misha Serkinov and Jared Cannonier. And in those fights, he was pretty much not wrestled, but in the Misha fight, he was. Cannonier fight, he kind of gassed out there late in the 2nd and 3rd round. I think if this fight goes to 3 rounds and maybe a decision, I think this Mikhail guy has a good chance to possibly get a decision victory, but I can't pick a guy that's just relying on one punch. I'm going to go Ion Kutalaba by a 1st-round stoppage, seeing that Mikhail did lose a fight by there in the 1st round of one of his fights. So I'll take Kutalaba. I think, as Jed was saying, I think he's a good guy. I think he's got a lot of potential. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be able to crack the top 10, like he said. I do think that he's going to be able to get stoppages over pretty good guys here and there in his career, and I'm pretty sure that Mikhail is going to be a guy he can get a stoppage over. So I'm going to pick Ion by a 1st-round stoppage, probably under the 71-minute or the 71-second mark.
Yeah, I'm definitely with both of you here. I like Ion Kutalaba a lot. He's probably one of my more confident picks, if not the most confident pick, just looking at the rest of the card. We have a lot of good, close fights on here that could go either way. So I'll say right now this is probably it is the most confident pick of the card, Ion Cutelaba by first-round knockout. From what I've heard about this newcomer, Lord Michelle, Michael, whatever you want to say, I've heard he's pretty hittable. And if you're hittable going up against Ion Cutelaba, it'll be a long night for you, maybe a short night if we're talking literal there. Cutelaba hits really hard. He's actually a pretty good fighter. He's well-rounded. He can get the takedown if needed. He prefers to stand, and I think he knocks out Oleg Zajic fairly quickly. Give me Cutelaba by a knockout in round number 1. Moving on, the feature Fight Pass early prelim, we got Alexei Oleinik, the boa constrictor, taking on up-and-comer heavyweight Curtis Razor Blades, number 9 versus number 12. I think that sort of speaks measures as to how shallow the heavyweight division is. Jed, you like the slight or fairly actually hefty underdog here in Alexei Oleinik or Razor Blades?
What are the odds on it? How big of a
we're talking about minus 350-ish.
Oh, God. Minus 350?
Minus 340, according to UFC.com, plus 280. I've seen higher or wider, though.
Man.
I've seen plus 300 for
I'm going to take Alexei Oleinik here. I think, especially at those odds. Those odds are outlandish. And maybe that might be wrong. I don't know. I'm probably going to talk myself back into Curtis Blades by the end of this discussion because I think Curtis Blades is actually talented, especially in the context of the heavyweight division. He's still really young, so he has a lot of upside and room to improve here. I don't know, man. This fight feels a lot more like a coin flip than it is at those odds, so I sort of want to take Oleinik just because of that. But at the same time, like, I'm going to take Oleinik just because it'll be fun. I think both of y'all end up taking Blades, and so this will add a little bit of diversity to the picks, I guess. But I'm going to take him basically because Alexei Oleinik can wrestle a little bit, and he's a solid grappler, especially for the division. And while Curtis Blades is young and athletic and hits hard and can offensively wrestle, he's also been taken down a fair number of times in the UFC. Cody East got him down a bunch of times. I think didn't Ngannou take him down as well. Like he can be wrestled, and I just think that if Alexei Oleinik can get him down, he's got enough of a top game to maybe create a problem for Curtis Razor Blades. I think people just consistently underestimate Alexei Oleinik. I know I did. I thought Travis Brown was going to hand him his ass, and damn if that's not how that didn't go at all. So yeah, I'll keep riding the train. I'll ride the what's the boa constrictors train here. Maybe he'll get another Ezekiel choke submission over Curtis Blades because MMA is a wild, wacky world. But give me Alexei Oleinik by Ezekiel choke in the first round. I'm just going to do it.
It's funny because I think an Ezekiel choke for Alexei Oleinik is kind of possible just because of Curtis Blades' style, who loves to look for the takedowns and loves to try to get on top and land some ground and pound. And that's one thing he's been really relying on pretty much in his UFC career. Looked for a couple of takedowns and was able to score a couple against Francis Ngannou. He fought Adam Milstead where he was able to just be relentless with his takedowns until he pretty much, like, almost career-ending injury took down Milstead. And I think Milstead did something with his leg on the takedown. Pretty brutal. And then Curtis Blades, when he fought Cody East, was able to get a few takedowns in there too, even though he was taking down himself. I think this is an interesting matchup because Oleinik, we saw in his fight with Travis Brown, he does have quite a bit of power, and of course, it's Travis Brown. He's got a deteriorating chin, but Oleinik, he relies so much on his submissions, but he carries quite a bit of power, especially when he swings. I'm in the end going to stick with Curtis Blades. I've been pretty high on him. He didn't put on the best performance against Daniel Omielanchuk in his last fight. He did get hit quite a bit. Seemed to be struggling a lot landing the right hand even in his orthodox stance, and wasn't able to get the fight down to the ground kind of how he wanted to. Wasn't really successful there, but I like Blades' relentlessness for takedowns. I feel like he's going to be the more active guy on the feet trying to look for them. And I think Oleinik's best chance is going to be able to get some kind of submission in this fight, and that's if probably he's off his back because that's kind of where he excels. But I'm expecting Blades has the IQ and intelligence with quite a bit of wins on his resume to hopefully defend some of the possible submission threats from Oleinik off his back. And I think that if he's able to defend them early on in that first round, if he does get him down, he's going to be able to have the better cardio to last pretty much the 15 minutes and score out a decision victory. So for those kind of reasons, and also the fact that I think Blaydes is going to be just a little bit better with his strikes, landing a little bit more diversity, while Alexi kind of depends so much on trying to land a big bomb. And maybe he's a little bit slower overall. I think Blaydes is just a quicker athlete, and I think he's a better athlete. I think that Blaydes is going to be able to get a decision here. Not sure about a finish. I mean, it could be possible, but Olejnik's only been finished like twice in his 60, 70 minute fights in his career. But I think that Blaydes is just a little bit more technical, at least in this aspect of his career, even though he's a lot younger of a guy and it's not a little, but a lot less experienced than Olejnik. I'm going to take in the end Curtis Razor Blaydes. I think he's going to be able to just edge out probably a 30-27 decision, maybe 29-28 on there, depending on how that first round goes. But I do think he'll have the better cardio to outlast Olejnik throughout 15 minutes.
This is an interesting matchup because I think in general, Alexei Olejnik is the better fighter right now on November 2nd, 2017. Olejnik is a bit more skilled than Curtis Blaydes, so I wasn't too impressed with in his last fight against Daniel Leonchuk. Huge favorite, and he did enough, but he certainly didn't impress and do as much as we thought. That's probably on us, just sort of overrating him at that point. But I think stylistically this is a pretty favorable matchup for Curtis Blaydes because he's obviously huge on the wrestling department, takedowns. He's really good at getting takedown, or decent anyways. He's really top heavy. He's big for the division, and he's heavy. He's strong, and I think that'll work quite well against Olejnik, who, although has a super funky and crafty ground game and can get submissions from any position, I think Blaydes will be able to control him quite well on the mat. I think if Blaydes gets a hold of him, and as long as he's in top position and top control, maybe even gets into mount, I think it's going to be a pretty tough fight for Olejnik. Of course, anything can happen, and the fact that Blaydes, his best shot at winning is to take Olejnik down, who is a submission threat. That's not always it's not going to be an easy fight, but I think stylistically it favors Blaydes because Olejnik has been taken down in the past without finding that weird submission off his back or whatever. And so I do like Curtis Blaydes. On the feet, both guys aren't very good. Olejnik is very wild, and Blaydes just doesn't have much striking yet at all. So I think this will be a fairly grinding-esque fight. I like Curtis Blaydes by TKO in the second round, ground and pound. Next up, we move on to the FS1 prelims. We got Randy Rude Boy Brown taking on Mickey Gall. The looking for a fight belt is on the line, I would say. Randy Brown, of course, one of the better fighters they found him looking for a fight, I'd say, and Mickey Gall, fairly hyped from looking for a fight, beat CM Punk, found for the Mike Jackson fight, now coming off a win over a fellow looking for a fight alum, and also the first looking for a fight guy, Sage Northcutt. I'm saying looking for a fight way too much here, so let's just get onto it. Randy Rude Boy Brown taking on Mickey Gall at 170. Jed, who do you like? Close odds.
It's a close fight. I mean, that's why the odds are close here. When this fight was first announced, I immediately was just like, oh, wow, Mickey Gall's going to lose. I just thought in my head, like, Randy Brown is going to end up getting this. But then as the fight's gotten closer, I think my sort of trepidation with picking Mickey Gall has sort of dropped off. Randy Brown's a good defender of takedowns, and if this stays on the feet, he's going to chew Mickey Gall up. Mickey Gall's not a good striker. I know we haven't seen a ton of him in the cage in general, but this is his fourth professional fight, and the nature of his particular skill set and how he came in the UFC means he has had success, but he has still not done a lot of the things that you would like to see developmentally, and striking is one of them. He's a great grappler, a really, really excellent grappler, but he's just not there on the feet, and he needs time and he needs comfort. He's young. Maybe he'll come out and show some new skills there. But Randy Brown can thump. It's just whether Randy Brown can stay upright, and that's really going to be the determiner of this fight. I think Mickey Gall is athletic enough, powerful enough to at least secure a takedown, probably in like the first round. And if he can't get the submission, because he might not be able to, But he's probably good enough to finish the fight if he gets him down one time. But if he can't, he only needs to get him down twice. And I think that he might have to eat some punches, wade through some fire, but I think he can at least secure enough takedowns to take home a victory. But I think he's actually just going to get the submission. I think Mickey Gall is going to get a first-round submission here. I won't be at all surprised if Randy Brown stuffs his shots and chews him up on the feet, though.
Yeah, the biggest difference in this fight, I think, comes when you look at the two and kind of what they do in the octagon. Mickey Gall, of course, is outstanding at getting takedowns, but also his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just phenomenal. Randy Brown, he's really offensively sound on the feet, throws quite a high volume of punches, but he kind of struggles a little bit in the grappling department. It's an interesting matchup. I've been back and forth on this one and thinking about it for a while. I wish I would have done a little bit more film study for this card and especially this fight because it's a pretty intriguing matchup. But I think in the end, I'm going with what Jed said, and I'm leaning more towards Mickey Gall. I feel like his wrestling abilities and his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu abilities are a little bit more sound than that of Randy Brown's striking abilities because Brown doesn't really pack a whole lot of power. We were able to see him get that knockout victory over Brian Camozzi, but I feel like it's more so with just a high volume of punches that he's able to capitalize on his opponents rather than carrying quite a bit of power. And I'm not really sure if with that high volume, if he's going to be able to do anything to Gall to really do anything on the feet significant to where it could hurt him or put him in a bad situation. When it comes to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, though, Mickey Gall and looking for those takedowns, Gall's relentless with him. Randy Brown, we've seen him fall a little bit to those who like to wrestle. We saw that in the Bilal Muhammad fight, where I actually picked Bilal. I thought that's kind of what the style he was going to implement, and Bilal was able to get the victory there. And also back when he fought Michael Graves, Graves was able to take him down twice and scored a second or third round submission in that one. I think that we're going to see something similar to what Graves did and a similar game plan to what Bilal Muhammad did in their fight. I think Mickey Gall is going to be able to get this one down, be able to find the back at some point and get another. I guess pretty much every victory he's had is by rear naked choke. So I would definitely say if you're going to pick Mickey Gall, a rear naked choke is probably the right call. So I've got Mickey Gall picked by second round submission over Randy Brown. I thought that this may go a little bit later. Maybe Brown can keep it on the feet for the first round, but I do think that Gall at some point he's going to be able to get this fight down and find that submission.
Yeah, this is an odd fight. It's pretty close, and that's why the odds are that close. And Gall was the underdog, and now last time I checked, he moved over to a slight favorite. This really comes down to, does Mickey Gall get Randy Brown down? And that's the entire fight, because Randy Brown is clearly the better striker and has knockout power and could put Mickey Gall away, if we're being honest. And then on the ground, Mickey Gall is a mile better as well and could definitely put Randy Brown to sleep or force him to tap out. So this, more than any fight, it really comes down to where it takes place. And ultimately, I think Mickey Gall is able to secure those takedowns. Randy Brown doesn't have amazing takedown defense. He has decent defense. And he's able to stay upright for some of the fight, but go back and watch the Michael Graves fight. He starts to fade. Maybe that's changed, but I don't think his cardio is all that fantastic. And I think Mickey Gall will start to thrive more in the later rounds. I think as the fight goes on, I think Mickey Gall does better. I think early on, Randy Brown chews him up on the feet, but I think once Gall gets comfortable, once we have a couple minutes passed, I think Mickey Gall probably looks and probably secures a takedown, and I think from there, the end maybe won't be near, but I think that's sort of the beginning of the end. Give me Mickey Gall by a rear naked choke in the second round. As I said, Brown kind of starts to fade, and we saw Graves really expose him on the ground once you sort of have him in a bad position and have him sort of close to a choke locked up. You're probably going to get it. So give me Mickey Gall by second round, rear naked choke. Next up, we got a pretty important light heavyweight belt between Ovin St. Preux, number 6, and Corey Overtime Anderson, number 7, although we got to call him Beastin 25-8. That never leaves and goes away as his official nickname. Overtime, he can say that all he's want, but it's Corey Beastin 25-8 Anderson. Jed, OSB or the slight underdog here, Corey Anderson. Interestingly, Anderson was supposed to fight Pat Cummins. Cummins pulled out with a staph infection. Anderson, of course, wanted him to continue or stay in the fight. He did not get his wish, and here comes OSB. The line is flipped. Anderson went from a pretty solid favorite to an underdog. Who do you like here?
Give me Ovince St. Preux, man. Look, if Corey Anderson wins, it won't be the most surprising thing in the world. Because Ovince St. Preux is a weird dude, and sometimes he'll just piss away a fight that he probably should win. Looking at you, Volkan Ozdemir fight, even though I actually think that I thought he won that fight and still just sort of got jacked on the judges. Sometimes he just won't be active. But we're talking about a dude who is, in many ways, like a bootleg John Jones. Like, he brings a weird, funky offense, dynamic finishing ability that you're not going to see elsewhere. And Corey Anderson is more of a meat and potatoes guy, and he hasn't beaten anybody good. Look at Corey Anderson's record. Like, what is Corey Anderson's, off the top of your head, can you name Corey Anderson's best win in the UFC?
Jan Blachowicz.
That is it, and it's the best win by far. His other wins are Matt Van Buren, Justin Jones, Fabio Maldonado, Tom Lawler, who's a blown-up middleweight, and Sean O'Connell. The only times he's ever fought good fighters, Jimmy Manuwa and Mauricio Hua, he lost. And frankly, losing to Shogun in 2016 is not – that's not a thing you want to do.
Although, don't forget, I think that was a fight that probably should have gone Anderson's way.
I think that fight was a really close fight, and if you had given it for Anderson, it wouldn't have been wrong. But I actually thought that Shogun edged it out in that fight. So, but still, going hammer and tongs with Shogun Hua in 2016 when you are how old is Corey Anderson? Like 28? I don't even know how old he is.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, he's like 28 years old. Like, come on, bro. You're a good athlete. This is not how that should be working. So, Ovince St. Preux fought Shogun Hua, and he put him on skates in about 3 seconds. I know MMA math doesn't work, but in this particular instance, I think it does. I mean, Corey Anderson is knockoutable. His chin is there to be hit. Ovince St. Preux has knockout power and can be a functionally decent counter striker when he wants, or he can just like power double you down and just be like, hey, I played football and I'm a way better athlete than you. Give me Corey Anderson with the finish. Or not Corey Anderson. Give me Ovince St. Preux with the finish of Corey Anderson somewhere in the first half of the fight.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anybody cares.
It's an Ovince Von Preux choke, too. I'm going to say he's going to get his third one in a row. 3 in a row.
I was just going to add in, completely unrelated, if anybody cares, Kamaru Usman's brother, Muhammad Usman, just picked up his third pro victory. Tachi Palace fights. It was a second-round TKO.
The only reason I care about that event at all is a dude who trains at our gym is in the main event. So,
Go that dude. Wes Peter Anderson.
I'm for that. When it comes down to a fight like this between two light heavyweights, of course, they're so powerful with their striking abilities. I got to kind of rely a little bit on their chin. I don't trust Corey Anderson's chin at all. I actually watched a little bit. So, when Corey Anderson fought Shogun Hua, the first and the second round at the very end, he got dropped twice. And the first drop came with a left hand, pretty significant left hand. Now, Shogun, he's known for standing orthodox, but he was able to land a hook, which hurt Corey Anderson and was almost able to get a stoppage if there were a few more seconds left, or maybe at least probably 30 seconds. I think that Shogun could have got a finish in that one. Jimmy Manuwa, which was Corey Anderson's last fight in March of this year, he got knocked out by a hook with the left hand, pretty much stunned first with a kind of a little hook, little uppercut there. And then Jimmy Manuwa was able to put Corey Anderson away with another big hook a few seconds later. OSP, what does he rely really dependently on, and how does he get so many knockouts? He relies quite a bit on that left hand, and the left hand usually comes behind with a hook, as we saw when he knocked out Pat Cummins and also when he knocked out Shogun Hua. Again, MMA math, don't want to say too much about it, but I do trust OSP a lot more in this one. I think that he might be able to land that left hand. He's a really good counter striker. I love the guy. I think he's got quite a bit of potential, but sometimes he's just not able to put it together. But right now, he looked, and I feel like it was really important for him to get that win over Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Now he seems to kind of gain a little bit of momentum back. I feel like the Volkan Ozdemir fight, where I thought it went to OSP, I think most people did. Just a close fight, but kind of sparked OSP a little bit to try to get back on the right path, and I think this is going to be a good fight for him. I picked OSP by first-round knockout. If this one goes past the first round, probably the second half of the second round, I favor Corey Anderson quite a bit more, especially with takedowns and trying to land some ground and pound, because Corey Anderson is pretty good once he gets on top. But I think that OSP is going to be able to get a finish here of a guy who just doesn't really have the best chin. So I'm going to take OSP by first-round knockout.
Yeah, I hate to keep it kind of boring because other than the Oleinik Blades fight, we've agreed on them all, and we'll agree once again. I like OSP here by first round knockout. Pretty clear fight. He's much better on the feet, and Corey Anderson, I'm not too confident in his chin, as you guys mentioned. OSP, much better striker. He's powerful, and he's a bit bigger than Anderson, although not really by a whole lot. He has a 1-inch reach advantage, and that's it. But he seems a bit thicker. He sort of has the, as we've talked about this probably multiple times, but some people can argue that the reason John Jones didn't murk him per se is just because of OSP's size. He's really athletic for the 205-pound division, and I think he has his way with Beastin 25-8 on the feet. The path to victory here for Anderson would be takedowns. St-Pierre hasn't been totally known as a guy to get grinded out, but that's sort of Anderson's best tool, although I don't think it works. I think OSP gets the job done pretty quickly in the first round. So OSP, round 1 knockout, pretty confident here. Next up, we got a heavyweight fight between Walt, the Big Ticket Harris, and Mark, the Hand of Godbeer. Jed, do you like Harris or Godbeer?
Sorry, I muted my mic. We talked about this fight, whatever it was last week or whenever.
Yes, this fight is so good we have to talk about it twice.
It's not. If you want a more in-depth breakdown, you can go check our Before the Battles UFC or whatever that was. Yeah, 216 a month ago. Mark Godbeer's not very good. Walt Harris isn't great, but he's young and athletic and hits hard. And Mark Godbeer is a guy who gets hit hard a lot, and when he does, he tends to fall over and fall down. So yeah, I think Walt Harris is going to come out and throw them bows, and he's not facing Fabricio Verdum in there, so it ain't gonna matter. He's just gonna drop he's gonna drop Godbeer, and that's gonna be all she wrote. Give me Walt Harris with a first round KO.
Yeah, I like Walt Harris quite a bit. I think he's got the athletic capabilities to really be a good athlete, but he just still hasn't been able to find momentum, and he hasn't really been able to put it together yet. And taking Fabricio Verdum on short notice is no easy task, and of course he got submitted pretty quick. But then again, he took that on, I guess, a couple hours notice, going up against one of the best in the world, and did get finished. But I think that Harris does have a good athletic capability. He's always tended to struggle with his wrestling defense. He's been taken down, and pretty much most of his losses on his record have come to wrestlers. Fabricio Verdum was able to get him down. So Pelele was able to get a second-round TKO when they fought a few years ago. And then Jared Rosholt, when they fought, I guess pretty much after Walt Harris, he was able to hurt him, I think, at one point in the second round. Just Jared Rosholt was relentless with his takedowns and was able to keep getting him down, and Harris kind of struggled with that. So going up against Mark Godbeer, I don't think Godbeer is that good. I did like watching him a little bit on the regional scene because he does like to scrap here and there, but he's just a lot slower than Walt Harris. He's not as athletic and gets hit quite a bit, as we saw in the Daniel Spitz fight. Daniel Spitz really isn't the best athlete, but was able to get a win recently, I think, in the UFC. But still, Godbeer just gets hit a little bit too much for my liking. I think he's lost like 2 fights by knockout. One was in Bellator to Czech Congo. The other one was before he was in Bellator. I like Walt Harris in this one. I think he's a good athlete, pretty offensively sound. I think he's putting together a pretty solid game here recently in his career. Still pretty young and still definitely has some potential here and there. Just has to get some momentum going after that loss of Fabricio Verdum. But I'm going to take Walt Harris. First round knockout. I think it'll come within 2 minutes.
Yep, got to keep it, complete the hat trick yet again. Give me Walt Harris by first round knockout. Quite confident again in this fight. Nothing's changed since UFC 216 other than the fact that Mark Godbeer got paid a bit of money to show up and weigh in, and Walt Harris got paid a bit of money to step up and get tapped up by Verdum in a minute. So that doesn't change anything. The only slight concern is the fact that Walt Harris did fight less than a month ago. And so, the fact is he didn't really take much damage other than – I can't really say that. I haven't seen the fight just because I missed almost all that card except for the last 2 title fights. But from what I heard from the fact that he got tapped up by armbar in 60 seconds, I would imagine it was basically just a sub. So he should be okay. But always fighters, when they fight less than a month after that. You have to mention it at least. But stylistically, he runs all through Mark Godbeer. Godbeer is not all that great. Walt Harris isn't either, but he's really athletic for the heavyweight division, and he hits really hard, and his striking is pretty good. He has a good cross. He's decent on the feet, much better than Godbeer. I don't really know how Godbeer can win this fight. Maybe, again, takedowns. I don't really know. I don't think there isn't a clear path to victory here for Godbeer. Give me Walt Harris, pretty sizable favorite here by first-round knockout. Next up, we got the featured FS1 prelim, and I guess I didn't mention this, but the prelim started at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. James Vick versus Joe Duffy at 155 pounds. Really, really fun matchup here. Although, personally, I feel like one guy is I'm pretty confident in the guy I'm going to pick. James Vick, the Texecutioner, or Joe Irish Duffy.
Glad you're confident, because I'm not. This is one of the ones that I've been struggling with a little more than the others on this particular card. I really like James Vick. I think he's a really good fighter, man. I know he's like 8-1 in the UFC but on the other end of that, I really like Joe Duffy too. I think both of these guys are really talented. I've been really high on Joe Duffy for a while, and I was pretty surprised by the Dustin Poirier fight. I thought he was going to handle Poirier, and for a round he was, and then things sort of went tits up when then the Diamond started getting into his wrestling game. But I don't think James Vick is going to get to a wrestling game here, and that's sort of how I'm breaking it down here. I think James Vick, his length and his size, he's an enormous lightweight. I don't know how he makes the weight, frankly. Often have been given opponents a lot of trouble, and he is still going to have a decent size advantage over Joe Duffy, but Duffy's boxing is so slick and so technical, and James Vick he's got power in his hands, but he's more reliant on using his length than he is on doing real solid fundamental work. He reaches a lot when he punches, and I think Joe Duffy can counter off that. I think Joe Duffy can lead, and I mean we've seen Vick get hurt by lesser boxers, and I think basically that Joe Duffy is probably the best fighter James Vick has ever fought, and it's just going to be a bit of a bridge too far. I'm interested to see it though, because maybe that length, maybe that size does give Duffy some problems. Maybe Vick tries to just physical and tries to work him over in the clinch. He's not a bad clinch fighter. He's got sneaky submissions off that snap down. He's got a good little darce on him too. Maybe he tries to muddy this fight up a little more instead of standing at range like he usually is happy to do, just because I think Duffy will piece him up at range. So maybe Vick can muddy this up a little bit, make it more of a dirty fight, take a page out of Dustin Poirier's playbook. And if he does, maybe we'll see that that's a problem that Joe Duffy consistently has, is a guy who's willing to pressure him and get in on his hips and try and control him that way and make him fight in multiple phases. But so far we haven't really seen that much out of James Vick, and so I don't expect to see it much here. I just think this is going to be a boxing match, and Joe Duffy is one of the better boxers in the division, if not the whole UFC. So I think he's going to maybe get a stoppage. I'm just for funsies, I'm going to say a second round KO of James Vick, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up in a decision either. So Joe Duffy, second round KO.
I was having a little bit of a hard time with this pick, but I think in the end I'm going to stick with my gut and what my initial pick was, and that's Joe Duffy. I think Joe Duffy has a lot more ways where he can win this fight, because he is pretty crafty with his submission skills, and that's one thing he was really dependent on pretty early in his career. He has a really tight guillotine choke, but also really crafty off his back and crafty when he's ever on top. But then he was able to put together, I think with his time off, he took a little break from mixed martial arts, a pretty good boxing record. I think he was undefeated and ended up coming over. And his boxing skills look really sharp. He was able to land a high volume on Dustin Poirier there in the opening round. But then as the fight kind of went on, as Dustin Poirier was able to land some takedowns, Duffy started to struggle, really had nothing off his back with the skill set of Dustin Poirier. And that's kind of where he struggled, just wasn't able to get up, didn't really, I feel like, have a lot of just the experience there to be able to understand what to do in a situation like that. And Poirier was able to get a decision victory there with his takedowns pretty relentlessly throughout the second and third round of that fight. Joe Duffy, though, in his last two fights has looked pretty sharp. James Vick has looked sharp as well. But I do think that we've seen a little bit more out of Duffy's skill set than James Vick, just because Vick was able to get a knockout over Marco Polo Reyes in his last fight, but Polo Reyes is always known for being such a hittable guy, and Vic happened to land one of the better shots against him that really impressively put Polo Reyes out, but Polo Reyes, as I mentioned, just gets hit quite a bit, so it was a matter of time before someone was going to stop him by knockout. Abel Trujillo became so relentless on trying to land a takedown against a guy who's just really intelligent with, as Jed mentioned, using his reach, and every single time Abel Trujillo shot from so deep, every single attempt for a takedown, and Vic was able to pretty much pay attention to it. And not only was Trujillo shooting from so far out, even if he was shooting far in, Vic was able to utilize his reach to keep Trujillo back from landing those takedowns. In a fight like this, though, I'm pretty reliant and confident on Duffy's boxing skill set. I think it's going to be a little bit more sharp there than Vic's. I think Vic might be able to land a takedown there, here or there, but I'm not really 100% confident in that. I think Joe Duffy has the better skill set, as I mentioned, overall. For those reasons alone, I think this could be a pretty solid scrap. I did pick Duffy by a second-round knockout on Pick'em, which I'm going to leave, but my pick, I've also been thinking about maybe a decision victory there too, pretty much as Jed mentioned, because Duffy kind of does slow down a little later with his volume. Pretty good at first, though, so maybe Vic is going to be durable enough, but after seeing him get knocked out there in the fight with Beneil Dariush, I had to check real quick. Beneil Dariush, who just landed a high volume there. I think Duffy's more sound with landing volume, and I think that he's going to be able to capitalize on that and get a stoppage here. So I'm going to stick with Duffy by a second-round knockout over James Vick.
I keep saying this, but we're all on the same page here pretty much for this card. I too like Joe Duffy, and exactly how you guys have it. Second-round TKO. James Vick is a very talented fighter. He's very good. He's getting better, and I think most importantly, I think his striking's getting better too. We saw in the Polo Reyes fight, he got the knockout. Polo Reyes very, very hittable, so not a big surprise, but nonetheless, he's picking up knockouts and looking decent on the feet. But I think Joe Duffy is still on another level on the feet. Joe Duffy's been boxing. He was a pro boxer, and Joe Duffy's really good. He's really talented. He might be top 15 quality, and I think if he isn't, I think eventually he will be. Although he has been in the UFC for a number of years already, or for I'm going to say 3, probably coming up to 3. And I feel like we expected him to move further along than he did. I think a couple layoffs, if I'm not mistaken, sort of hindered that a little bit, and the loss to Dustin Poirier didn't help. But I like Duffy. I like him quite a bit. James Vick is good, but I think Duffy's much better on the feet. I think he's a bit more active. I think he's much more technical. And I'm not super confident in Vic's chin. I know Beneil Dariush is very good and might be an underrated striker, but Joe Duffy is very good on the feet and might be better than Beneil Dariush. Dariush, not a knockout artist. Even if
Joe Duffy is definitely better than Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush can hit hard, but Joe Duffy hits equally well and is much better on the feet.
Yeah, he's more technical, and I mean, I never even looked at Dariush though as a knockout artist. I guess he clearly hits hard. He can, but I mean, we just don't see Beneil Dariush by knockout all that often against fairly high-level guys. But so looking at that, I like Joe Duffy's chances in this fight. I think James Vick can make this interesting, though. He's super lanky for lightweight, huge in the division. He has a 3-inch reach advantage, I think. 3-inch reach, and height is 5 inches. Super tall for lightweight. I think that could make Joe Duffy struggle a little bit getting inside his.
Nick, I can't hear you.
Oh,
nope.
somehow my mic muted itself. But what I was saying was
little stretch. I didn't hear you at all. Sorry.
Well, what I was saying is that Duffy is a lot better on the feet. The only way Vic can make this interesting on the mat, where he's super lanky, and that could give Duffy some problems if he gets in the mat. But ultimately, I think this will be a stand-up fight where Duffy's able to keep it where he wants it. He'll need to get inside a little bit. Vic has a reach advantage, but ultimately, I think Duffy's able to outpoint him on the feet and probably land something significant halfway through. Give me Duffy, as I said early, by first round or second round TKO. Alrighty, with that, we move on to the pay-per-view main card of UFC 217, starting off at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. First fight on the main card, we have middleweight, former welterweight champion Johnny Hendricks, Big Rig, taking on Paulo the Eraser Borrachinha. That might just be the best nickname of all time. A little sarcasm there. Ariel Helwani, your colleague, actually put out a video, an interview, talking about why Borrachinha's nickname is the Eraser. It's a brand new nickname. I have yet to watch it. Maybe I should, because right now it's still a horrible nickname, and I don't know why, or why it is its nickname. Jed, do you like the up-and-coming middleweight bomber, Paulo Borrachinha, who I just realized his actual last name is Costa, but we'll go with his nickname, Borrachinha? Or does Johnny Hendricks turn back the clock and actually get back into the winning column?
Give me 1 second and go to Wes if you could. I need to step away for just a moment. Yeah, so Wes, you're up.
Johnny Hendricks, who walks away the victor here?
It's really hard to pick Johnny Hendricks pretty much at any point in his fights, no matter who he fights, just because he just hasn't looked good in pretty much any of his performances. Even the one that he had against Hector Lombard, he was just able to take advantage of the single shot power of Hector Lombard, who only looked for takedowns, and Johnny Hendricks was just able to land a little bit more volume here and there in the fight, but it wasn't anything too superb. In the Tim Boetsch fight, he hardly landed any punches, and Tim Boetsch was able to have the higher volume there. The Neil Magny fight, all Hendricks did was look for takedowns, didn't land many punches at all. Neil Magny was able to throw such a high volume off his back, and that's how Magny was able to get the victory. And Kelvin Gastelum in their fight was able to just land so many punches and strikes. And we can even say the Stephen Thompson fight. So I remember when Paulo Henrique Costa, I should say, I guess, Borrachinha, fought Gareth McLennan. I remember so many people were picking Gareth McLennan, and I watched Borrachinha and saw so many of his highlights, and he looked like a really impressive up-and-coming athlete that I thought was going to have a lot of potential. And for some reason, I remember on Pick'em, I think like 70% of people picked Gareth McLennan. I was going to Borrachinha because I was really impressed with his game, and he was able to go out there, get a really quick knockout, and looked really impressive in doing so. Bosch, who was able to land a couple takedowns there early, but then gassed out. Paulo Henrique Costa was able to get the second-round stoppage. I think we're going to see something pretty similar to what Ben Bosch was able to accomplish in that fight. I think Hendricks is going to look for a couple takedowns there early in the first round. Maybe be able to get them, probably be able to get them because Paulo Borrachinha, I guess really, I mean, if we think about it in this aspect, he doesn't really have a whole lot of experience fighting top-level guys, or at least fighters that did have a lot of experience. And when it comes down to it, Johnny Hendricks, of course, has a lot more experience than a guy like Oluwale Ben Bosch. So Hendricks might be able to get a couple takedowns in there. And for all we know, maybe Borrachinha just really hasn't fought the best competition there in the world. But I think when it comes down to it and just looking at their game and putting all of their past and the fighters that they fought aside, who's the better athlete at this point, I think we've got to go Borrachinha. I think Borrachinha is just a whole lot better of a striker. He's going to have to avoid those takedown attempts from Johnny Hendricks, but I think he will be able to. And I'm not sure Hendricks has the chin anymore or the cardio to be able to do anything really significant, especially once this fight gets past the first round. So I'm definitely taking Borrachinha. I've been picked by a second-round knockout. Might be able to get it in the first, but I do think Hendricks might be able to land a couple takedowns there. But then I think in the second round, he's going to struggle once Borrachinha finds his rhythm and do pretty much what he did to Ben Bosch, and that's be able to get a knockout. So I'm taking Borrachinha, second-round knockout over Johnny Hendricks. And I think Hendricks, I guess, will probably retire after this fight. I mean, it probably would be the best choice. The guy's taken a lot of damage recently, and you can tell in his interviews, he just does not look the same in comparison to where he was back when he was fighting GSP and Carlos Condit and Jake Ellenberger and Martin Kampmann. Or not Jake,
Robbie Lawler.
And Robbie Lawler, pretty much all these guys. Just he looked so much better of an athlete, looked so much more in shape, and also you could tell his speech was a lot there. Now listening to some of his interviews, he just does not sound fully there.
He wants it more, or he wanted it more, I should say.
Seems a lot, yeah. He seems a lot different, and I think he wanted it more. And I feel like at this point, he's just stepping in there maybe for a paycheck. And I feel bad kind of saying that because I remember back in the day, I was a pretty big Johnny Hendricks fan. I love watching the guy fight, but now it's just honestly hard to watch, and you never want a fighter to pretty much take the damage like he's taken. But I do think that Borrachina is going to be able to get a finish here.
Yeah, Wes went for a really long time, so I don't need to add much beyond. Let me.
And Jed has some real life things to tend to, so we'll let. Okay.
I'm back. Basically to sum up Wes's whole take, Johnny Hendricks is washed, and so he's gonna lose because those are both accurate statements. Paulo Borrachina is not like the best fighter in the world, but it doesn't take the best guy in the world to beat Johnny Hendricks anymore. Johnny Hendricks is a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. I know he blew weight a bunch, but that's because he's a fat ass who ate too much. That is not because he is a natural middleweight. He's not. He's a big welterweight, but he made that weight forever and then stopped doing well at it for whatever reasons that he did that. I'm not going to speculate on that point, but he's a welterweight. He got outsized in his last battle with Tim Boetsch. Borrachina is a middleweight. He's going to do middleweight things over a guy who is washed, and you guys are saying motivation. I don't even think it's motivation, and maybe it has something to do with it. I think that the weight struggles might lend to some degree of credibility to that argument, but fighting Robbie Lawler ruins your life, man. He takes years off your life, and he ruins your career, and Johnny Hendricks spent 50 minutes in a cage with him and came out the other end of it not looking a damn thing like the fighter he looked going into those two. So I think that's it. Johnny Hendricks is washed. I don't think he's going to retire. His move to Jackson seems to have reinvigorated him mentally, but we'll see. But yeah, give me Borrachina by KO in the second round.
Yeah, kind of hate to say it just because it sort of proves how washed Johnny Hendricks is in 2017, but I got to go Paulo Borrachina as well. I'm not super confident just because this seems like the fight where Johnny Hendricks is going to prove where he's not 100% done. I mean, he just beat Hector Lombard. And I know Lombard's kind of done too, but that was still a decent win. And that didn't happen all that long ago. It was February of this year. It kind of feels like the fight where we're going to be slapping ourselves afterwards thinking, oh, Johnny Hendricks, yeah, he was actually the way better fighter, but we just all thought he'd get deaded because he's fighting. Well, look at who he's fighting, and also look at Johnny Hendricks. But I can't pick Johnny Hendricks. I cannot pick Johnny Hendricks. I mean, he'll beat some people, but this guy is freaking jacked. Paulo Borrachina, in the first round is a murderer. He is incredible. He's explosive as hell, and he murks guys. I mean, he destroyed Oluwole Bamboche, the ground and pound, just wobbling him on the feet. And before that, he destroyed Gareth McLellan, as most people do. The one problem the multiple problems with Borrachina, though, he was taken down by Oluwole Bamboche. So if Bamboche can get him down, and I think even momentarily and very briefly get his back before Borrachina slipped out, who's to say Johnny Big Rig Hendricks can't do that and can't do it with a lot more success and hold Borrachina down until Borrachina gasses? Because I don't have proof, because I think all of his fights have ended within 7 minutes or so. But you're looking at who he is, his figure, I would think Borrachina doesn't have fantastic cardio. I will not be surprised if Johnny Hendricks is able to get Borrachina down after weathering the storm and is able to make it pretty gritty and boring and sort of expose Borrachina and show us that, okay, he still has what it takes to beat a very hyped up and maybe overrated Paulo Borrachina. But again, this guy murders people in round 1 and 2 if it gets there, and Johnny Hendricks just doesn't want to fight anymore. He's out of shape. He struggles to make weight at 185 despite moving up from 170. He's looked so different in the past few years. He doesn't have the knockout power, it seems, and he's getting knocked out by Tim Boetsch. I mean, if Tim Boetsch can put you away, I gotta think Paulo Borrachina can as well. Give me Borrachina, knockout round 1. Johnny Hendricks needs to weather the storm in order to win, in order to have a chance here. Ultimately, I don't think he does. gave me Paulo Borrachinha first-round knockout, and by far the biggest win of his career, despite the fact that Johnny Hendricks is a complete ghost of who he was when he fought GSP and beat Robbie Lawler for the title in March of 2014. Next up, we move to a welterweight matchup, really important and really fun fight. Number 2, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on number 4, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. Awesome fight in the 170-pound division. If Masvidal wins, he does have a case for a title shot, although Dana White did say the winner of Lawler Dos Anjos will get it against Tyron Woodley. Colby Covington wants it. So there's a number of people in line, but Masvidal would have a case. I don't think he necessarily would get it. And he also needs to get past Thompson, which is a tough fight. But the Jed, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Jorge Masvidal, who walks away with the win.
George Masvidal is going to bust up Stephen Thompson tomorrow night. Or I guess technically not tomorrow night, but by the time we finish this, it'll probably count as tomorrow night. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is a good fighter who has probably one actual good win on his resume, the Roy McDonald win. And, I mean, arguably he beat Tyron Woodley, but he couldn't even beat a Tyron Woodley who literally did nothing. Like, Tyron Woodley literally stared at him for 20 minutes in both of their 2 fights, and he just couldn't beat him. George Masvidal is not going to do that. George Masvidal is extremely good. Like, he's maybe the most underrated fighter in the world right now. Dude's a technician. He has skills all over the place. He's an incredible defensive fighter, a very potent offensive threat. And since slightly before moving up to welterweight, and now that he is at welterweight for real, he has become much more aggressive. His biggest issue was really that in fights he felt he was winning, he would not press the action. He wouldn't put a stamp on it, and so then he would lose kind of contentious bullshit decisions on judges' scorecards. He's not doing that anymore, and he's not going to do that here. Stephen Thompson he's just not as good of a striker. That's it, straight up. That's the world here. And what's he going to wrestle George Masvidal? He ain't going to wrestle Masvidal. Masvidal might be able to wrestle occasionally if he feels compelled to in this fight, but I don't think he has to. I think his boxing is good enough to get the damn thing done, and I think that's something a lot of people aren't going to expect to see, but it's what's going to happen. George Masvidal is, and I'm calling him George because I always call him George because they called him George in the Boatyard, and it just cracks me up to go watch those videos. But yeah, George Masvidal going to win a decision over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Excuse me, I've been back and forth on this one for a little bit too. I feel like this is a really close matchup, a matchup between 2 technical fighters that both have really impressive striking abilities, but also know how to wrestle here and there, but just don't utilize it quite a bit. They rely quite a bit on their impressive, especially Thompson with his flashy techniques. Jorge Masvidal with his just beautiful combinations and very strategic punching abilities. I'm gonna go with what I picked, and my initial pick and the fighter that I've stuck with, which might be, I don't know, a surprise to too many, but I'm going with Jorge Masvidal on this one as well. One of the biggest reasons, and Jed kind of touched on it, is that a lot of the fighters Stephen Thompson has fought recently, I will even include Rory McDonald in saying this, but Tyron Woodley, the biggest one, they don't really, especially in their fights, they didn't show a whole lot of offensive output in their performances. They relied quite a bit on trying to be strategic with their punches, and Stephen Thompson was pretty much able to land some counter shots here and there, utilized his kicks on the outside because the fighters weren't coming in too aggressively or too quickly, and was able to circle out and pretty much repeat. And he was able to get the job done over Rory McDonald just because he did it quite a bit. Rory was just kind of reliant and hesitant on a lot of his shots, and that's how Stephen Thompson looked so dominant. Tyron Woodley didn't land pretty much anything, but was able to land the bombs there on Thompson, which hurt him in, I guess, the 3rd round of the first fight and then the 5th round of the 5th fight. So Woodley did pretty much all the damage. Thompson was just able to land the nice little counter shots here and there, which I guess in the fight itself, it looked like he definitely would have won more rounds and taken the fight, even though Woodley did the most damage. Jorge Masvidal, though, is the fighter who's not going to be reliant and hesitant on landing quite a bit of volume. He's going to be there pushing in the face pretty much consistently throughout the rounds, similar to kind of what Matt Brown did back in the day. And I know that's when Stephen Thompson was still really young here in the UFC, didn't have a whole lot of experience, and I think that might have only been like his second or third fight there in the UFC. But still, I think Masvidal is going to be the fighter to pose a lot more threats than a lot of the opponents that Stephen Thompson has fought, just because of the game plan and the style that Masvidal implements. And it's something that has cost him in some of his fights. But then again, we look at the fights that he's lost, especially recent. I'm not even going to count, I guess, the Lorenz Larkin fight, but Ben Henderson was able to take him down. Lorenz Larkin, that was a really close fight, one that could have gone either way. And I think I did score it for Larkin. But, I mean, then again, if you rewatch it, you could score it for Masvidal. Maia was able to land those takedowns here, but Masvidal was able to land a lot more of the volume. And Husam Kabalov back in the day, I think that was a lightweight, was able to just land takedowns over Masvidal. I don't think Thompson's going to be able to get this one down. I think Masvidal is very cautious with trying to protect his takedowns, especially after that last fight. And I think that he's just going to be able to be consistently throughout the 15 minutes in Stephen Thompson's face. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a close fight, so I'm taking a little risky pick, especially over MMA Sucker with the staff picks. I'm going to split decision. I feel like this is the kind of fight where maybe I could be wrong with what I'm saying, and Stephen Thompson's going to have a little bit more volume there, especially on the outside. But I feel like it's just going to be one of those fights where it could be pretty close throughout each round, and it's going to be dependent on the judges' scorecards, because I'm not sure if anybody's going to be able to get a finish here. I'm going to stick with my gut, though. I think Masvidal's going to take it, but I do think that this is going to be really close. And for that reason, I picked a split decision. I'm looking forward to it. Could be a pretty entertaining fight, maybe a fight of the night contender, but I think it's dependent on kind of Thompson's output too, because sometimes he just doesn't throw a whole lot. He usually, if he doesn't get the knockout, it's usually more technical than it is scrappy. Masvidal, though, is going to make it scrappy, and I think for that reason he's going to be able to get a very close decision victory here.
Jed, I feel, let me know if I'm right or wrong. I feel like you're surprised you're not the only person backing Masvidal.
Yeah, I thought both of you would take Wonder Boy.
Well, with that, give me Jorge Masvidal. I don't know how this happens, but we agree on quite a bit tonight. We often don't, but UFC 217 is the night where we all do great or we all do terrible. It might just come down to good old Alexei Ezekiel himself, Oleinik, but
and I don't even believe in that pick. I picked it because I thought we'd pick too many things similar, and now I'm glad I did just because of this. But damn,
there is one earlier fight that we've already talked about. I am contemplating changing. I will make my decision before we end the show.
Oh, get in the end zone.
But for now, let's talk about Jorge Masvidal and why he. Okay, so now it makes sense. You're talking about football.
I am talking about football, and the quarterback for my fantasy team is currently playing football, and he just threw a touchdown pass, but he got called back, and the guy was down on the 1 yard line or less than, and now he just quarterback sneaked it, so it's going to work out for more points for me, I hope, assuming he made it in the end zone. Anyway, continue.
Nice. I'm in a hockey pool for NHL. I have no idea where I am. I know you guys don't care about NHL because you're in the States, but just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, let's talk about Jorge Masvidal and why he'll defeat Wonderboy Thompson. Super close fight, firstly. One of the better fights on the card. I think it could be fun. I mean, you guys sort of hit the nail on the head. I was initially picking Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and then yesterday, I think it was, I started to think about it more, and I realized, Jorge Masvidal has a good chance of outpointing Wonderboy Thompson here. Wonderboy Thompson has a super tricky style. It's, of course, a very traditional karate style, hands low, his stance sort of sideways and a lot of kicks, and he's super funky. But I think the last two fights against Woodley will help fighters beat Wonderboy. There was a time before the Woodley fights I thought Wonderboy was probably the best welterweight on the planet. I don't think that's the case anymore. Well, clearly he's come up short in his last two, but both close fights. But I think there's I feel like Jorge Masvidal will be able to, go back to those two Woodley fights and see Stephen Thompson's willing to not do anything, and I guess still think an odd kick or an odd jab will win him rounds, and ultimately that just doesn't, and that's why he's not the welterweight champion right now. Jorge Masvidal is going to get in his face. He's going to make Wonderboy struggle on the feet. He's by far the better boxer. Wonderboy, of course, has the kicks, and she has the karate style that can confuse fighters, and it could confuse Masvidal, and he could pick up rounds, and he could win the fight by standing back. He has a super small reach advantage. It's just 1 inch, and then the height is just 1 inch. I don't think that plays much of a factor. Masvidal is a super good boxer. He should be able to punch at range and tag Thompson throughout the fight. I like Jorge Masvidal to outpoint Stephen Thompson. On the feet here, I don't think we need to factor in the ground game at all. Masvidal is a striker. Thompson's a striker by trade completely, entirely. There's no way this is on the ground at all. Well, I mean, if there is a second on the ground, I genuinely would be surprised. I don't know why it would be other than a slip. And even still, I doubt Thompson would hop on Masvidal if Masvidal fell to the ground suddenly, whatever, tripped over his own feet. But stylistically, I think this favors Masvidal a little bit. Close fight, but give me Masvidal by unanimous decision. Outpoints the Wonder Boy on the feet. Next up, we move to our first of 3 UFC title fights. The strawweight championship is on the line when champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk defends her title for, I want to say, the 6th time. It might be 5, but I'm going with 6. That's what my gut feeling is. She's taking on former title challenger, inaugural title challenger, Thug Rose Namajunas. Number 4 versus the champ. Who walks away with UFC gold? Jed Meshew. Does Joanna Jędrzejczyk retain, or does Rose Namajunas gain?
Come on, who are we fucking kidding here?
I don't know. Some people think this is a close fight.
Well, I mean, no, just no.
It was you who said on the MMA circus. You sort of
tried to say it was a close fight. I said that I feel closer than I did 6 months ago. I didn't say I felt it was a close fight or that there's ever a doubt. Okay. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is in my top 5 fighters of all time already. And I think that she is unequivocally the greatest female mixed martial artist that has ever graced a cage. And if you don't agree with that, I will fight you on general principle because you're wrong. Objectively, you're freaking wrong. And Rose Namajunas is young. Maybe she shows a lot of improvement, but she'd have to show such drastic improvement here that it strains credulity to believe that it's going to matter. Rose can't compete on the feet, and that's it. Rose to win this fight, Rose has to get takedowns. She's not going to be able to. And on the feet, or she has to hit Joanna with something that drops her, a la Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and I don't think she can either. Maybe she can land one big potent silent salvo of offense, but it has to be enough to finish the fight, because if not, Joanna's just going to get back up, shake her head a little bit, and then just beat the hell out of her again. That's it. Joanna throws a million punches. They all wear you down quickly. She's better in the clinch than Rose. She's better at range than Rose. Rose's advantage is only on the floor, and I don't think she has any ability to get it there. So, yeah, Joanna Jędrzejczyk's going to beat the hell out of Rose Namajunas. Maybe gets a stoppage even. Maybe just piles up points over 5 rounds. She's the female Jose Aldo, and she's awesome, and I can't wait to watch her work because it's always a pleasure to see that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add here. I feel like Rose Namajunas' best 2 paths are both by submission. One being a flying armbar, which is never going to probably happen again, especially in the UFC. The other one is by rear naked choke, as we've seen her get a few times here and there in her career. I think over Michelle Watterson, definitely over Paige Van Zandt, and then the standing rear naked choke, which is actually really awesome to see when she got it over Angela Hill back at UFC 192. That's actually one of my favorite submissions of the year, just because I love submissions, especially when they're standing like that. So that was really impressive. But going up against Joanna, I just don't see anything in favor for Namajunas. She wasn't able to get Karolina Kowalkiewicz down. Joanna probably, her takedown defense isn't as great as Karolina's, but I do think that she's going to have the ability, especially seeing what she did to Jessica Andrade. She was able to get her down a couple times. I think that's the only thing she needs to work on. And not that I think that, I know that, because Rose Namajunas, she looks pretty decent with her striking there in the first round, but it's nothing in comparison to Joanna's skills there, even in the first round. And then as the fight proceeds, Namajunas just becomes a little bit sloppy with her technique, and Joanna starts to take over as her fights pretty much proceed. So I just don't see this one being in favor for Namajunas pretty much anywhere. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to get this one down. That's her only chance. And I think for the majority of the fight, this one's going to be on the feet. I think Joanna has the ability to maybe be able to get a finish here, especially later on, probably a 4th or 5th round stoppage. I did pick a unanimous decision. I think that probably a decision is the more likely outcome, just because Joanna carries a lot more technicality than she does try to focus on getting the knockouts, even though she does get them, but it's because of her high volume, and maybe she'll be able to get one. And I just don't think Rose is going to take this one. I'm going to stick with Joanna by a decision, but I would favor her by a late stoppage. If you're going to pick Namajunas, you better pick her in the first round, because if it's not in the first by submission, she's not going to win this fight. And I'm pretty confident in Joanna in this one. So I'll stick with Joanna. I agree with Jed. I think she's the greatest female athlete of all time. Unbelievable athlete, and I get excited to watch her fight. And I would love to see this as a main event, but it's not. But that's just because I love watching Joanna fight, no matter when it is. That's pretty much it. Joanna's going to win this one by either a late stoppage or a unanimous decision.
Alrighty, I gotta agree with you guys here. Again,
Whoa, Nick, chill and reset, because you sound fucking terrible.
Test. 1, 2, 3.
Nope, you're still scratchy as hell.
Scratchy.
Yeah.
Still good?
Yeah, still awful. Still just the worst.
Unplug the mic. Plug it back in. Be back in.
Okay. Yeah. So, while Nick does that, Wesley.
We'll take over the show momentarily.
We will. I would like to point out that if I had not picked Alexei Oleinik, which I really didn't even want to do,
we would be all on the same page.
We'd all be on the exact same page. And I know for a fact that Nick and I share our last 2 picks as well. So it's possible that, and I think that you might share them too. So we might just have the most boring show ever. Nicholas, glad to have you back.
I think Wes will have one different. That's my gut feeling.
And it's possible.
I do have my picks posted, but I'm not really sure what you all are going for.
We'll save everything.
We'll see shortly. Don't worry.
Yes.
You're on.
Yes. Yeah. Wes for everybody. Yeah. Wes hopped in the group chat on Twitter we have for the show. I think Monday he's like, "Who you guys going to the main event?" And we're like, "Come on, wait till the show. Gotta be a surprise."
Nicholas, you were telling us about Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Caroline, or whoever the hell she's fighting.
I started, and then I got scratchy, and then we started talking about whatever else. I like Joanna Jędrzejczyk quite a bit here to retain the strawweight championship and tie Ronda Rousey's record for the longest reigning female champion in the UFC. I think Joanna Jędrzejczyk rips Rose Namajunas up on the feet here very convincingly. She is one of the best strikers in the world, and certainly the best striker, the best female striker, and the best women's MMA fighter of all time. As far as her skill goes, we can make the case for Chris Cyborg because she's an animal and because she's a name, sort of, but Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the best women's fighter we've ever seen. Rose Namajunas is very good. She's really talented. She's good on the mat. She's getting better on the feet. She has hard striking. Her kicks are good. And ultimately, I feel like she's kind of underrated just because she drops the fight here and there, getting tapped up by Carla Esparza in her debut, losing to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She keeps getting, going up, and then just falls off or, loses a fight. So she's finally made it, mostly because Joanna Jędrzejczyk has fought everybody else relevant, Claudia Gadelha, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Jessica Andrade, and so on. And this sort of just made sense, even though Rose is still, I would argue, definitely worse than Andrade and Gadelha. Karolina is a close fight today, despite what happened in July of last year. But yeah, Jędrzejczyk's going to win quite dominantly here. Rose needs to take this to the mat. She needs to get this down to the ground if she wants to become the champion here. And I don't really have much reason to think she will be or can. Gadelha was able to get Joanna down briefly in the first couple rounds of that title fight last summer. Not this past summer, but summer 2016. But that was more just because she's super strong. And her wrestling is a lot different than Namajunas. Namajunas is more of a submission threat than Gadelha is, but Gadelha has decent wrestling. I guess Namajunas can catch Joanna on the feet. We have seen Joanna rocked very briefly. Pretty much the only time in the UFC she's been rocked. Carolina caught her in the 4th round and probably stole that round, but Joanna recovered pretty quickly, and that was good. I am slightly concerned just because Carolina not known for her power. Rose probably has more power than Carolina. And so if Rose lands something flush, she could knock Joanna Jędrzejczyk out. But I can't pick in such a high-level fight. I can't pick off of luck or off of sort of a lucky shot in a way. So I got to go Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think this will be one of her more dominant title defenses, honestly. I think she beats Rose Namajunas up. I think Namajunas gets bloody, and I think she loses by TKO. By TKO in the 4th round. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, late stoppage, round 4 TKO. That is my pick, and still. We move on to the co-main event of the evening. The UFC Bantamweight Championship is on the line. Cody No Love Garbrandt defends the title for the very first time since defeating Dominic Cruz in a big upset last December to win UFC Gold. He takes on bitter rival, former Team Alpha Male teammate, TJ Dillashaw, and don't forget that he is a former UFC Bantamweight champion too. Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, a lot is on the line here, and still and new. Who do you got, Jed?
Give me Cody Garbrandt. I think he's – I don't know, man. I thought this we talked about this yesterday some. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I was probably – if you'd asked me before they were supposed to originally fight, I was probably going to end up taking TJ Dillashaw because I think Dillashaw is a more offensively minded version of Dominic Cruz in a lot of ways, and Cruz still managed to take 2 rounds off Garbrandt, and that's without kind of would be necessary. And so I would think that, like, okay, Dillashaw is going to throw more. It's just going to put more volume on Garbrandt, and the volume is going to win the day here. But as I've kind of considered it more, I think that, one, Dillashaw is a finished product at this point. We know where he's at. He's not going to improve dramatically from fight to fight. Garbrandt is still at the stage where he can make big serious leaps between fights, and he'll have been out almost a full year. He might look way better than we were expecting. And the other thing is there's Dillashaw's offense is a double-edged sword. The fact that he throws more also means he's there to be hit more, and while he's pretty defensively sound, he is going to be in the range where Garbrandt is going to just kind of eat him up with his speed and his power. He's so damn fast. He has such good footwork and such powerful hands. I think he catches TJ coming in a bunch and maybe doesn't get a finish, though I think he probably will end up getting one. But at the very least, he's going to score enough knockdowns, enough big power shots to take the decision. I think he's going to be able to drop TJ. We've seen TJ get knocked out. Granted, Dodson's one of the biggest hitters in the entire sport, pound for pound, but Garbrandt has a ton of power, a ton of speed, great accuracy with his hands, and I think that the power, speed, his athleticism, his growth, all that is just adds up to be a bad day for TJ Dillashaw. So give me Cody Garbrandt by knockout in the 3rd round.
I like this fight quite a bit. I think this will definitely be a fight of the night contender. I guess my ultimate pick in the end is Cody Garbrandt as well. I don't mean to be pretty repetitive, but I feel like he's just the more.
Don't worry, Wes. We've been repetitive all night.
I know we have been, and it kind of sucks, but I feel like this is just a card where I feel like we're just picking a lot of the guys that make common sense.
It's weird, though, because these are close fights. Like, these aren't
yeah, some of them are close. I think the one I'm most shocked about is that we all agreed on Thompson Masvidal, because I honestly thought I was the only person for sure going to pick Masvidal.
I thought somebody was going to take Randy Brown.
Yeah, I was going the same way with that one too. And I actually did, when I first heard this fight, I did go Randy Brown. But
I thought somebody would take James Vick too, man. Like,
there's some good fights, and I guess with this one too, I think I might disagree on the next one, but that's just because I'm kind of dumb. I do like Cody Garbrandt though quite a bit in this one. I was really impressed most with his ability to defend the takedowns of Dominic Cruz, because we've known Dominic Cruz pretty much throughout his entire mixed martial arts career for being pretty outstanding at landing his takedowns, but also keeping his opponents down and just being pretty impressive with his ground and pound. And a lot of the times he was able to utilize it with his movement, but Cody Garbrandt was the first guy to pretty much 100% figure it out. TJ Dillashaw about 85%. But Cody Garbrandt was able to defend all 7 of Dominic Cruz's takedowns. When TJ and Dominic fought, I think Dominic Cruz was still able to get him down like 5 times, and he shot like 10 times. So he's pretty much every 2 takedowns, he would be able to get one. Cody stuffed every single one. His takedown defense is still 100% throughout his mixed martial arts career. TJ Dillashaw depends quite a bit on his takedowns here and there too, but I don't think he's going to be able to land them against Garbrandt because Garbrandt's very quick and very reactive to a lot of the times his opponents throw. He's able to move a lot just pretty effectively, not with the same style that Dillashaw implements and not with the same style that Cruz implements, but he's just it's a little bit different, but it's very effective in what he's able to do. He hits a lot harder than TJ Dillashaw, and also I feel like Dillashaw just gets hit a little bit too much. He was hit quite a bit in the Dominic Cruz fight. I think that Cody Garbrandt is definitely just a more technical fighter, especially when it comes to the striking abilities. Dillashaw moves good, but I'm still impressed with Garbrandt's movements. I think this is a pretty close matchup, but I think that Garbrandt edges it out just slightly, of course, with the wrestling department and the fact that I don't think Dillashaw is going to get Garbrandt down, but Garbrandt's pretty good at timing, maybe not so much holding his opponents down, but good at being able to just kind of react to where his opponents are a little bit too postured up and shoot in for a takedown because he was able to get Cruz down once or twice in that fight. Dillashaw, he just gets hit a little much too for my liking. I think I picked the 2nd round knockout for Garbrandt, but I think that there's a possibility this could go all 5 rounds as Dillashaw's only been knocked out once, and it was John Dotson pretty early in his career. But could go to a decision, but I like Garbrandt by knockout. I like his power. Dillashaw gets hit quite a bit, as I mentioned, and I think the Garbrandt can capitalize on that. So I'm going to stick with it. Garbrandt by a 2nd round knockout over TJ Dillashaw to retain the Bantamweight Championship. Or defend, I should say.
At this point, this is just a trend. We agree, and we will agree once again. Give me no love to retain the UFC Bantamweight Championship. I like Cody Garbrandt to defeat TJ Dillashaw here. I think he is faster. I think he is a lot more explosive. He is a lot more dangerous on the feet. He hits like a freaking truck, and he'll be able to outpoint TJ Dillashaw. Dillashaw offers a bit more offense and probably makes it closer than the Cruz fight just because Dillashaw is more offense-oriented than Cruz, who is a bit more defense-oriented. I think TJ's his footwork, though, isn't as funky, and I think Garbrandt's able to figure him out a bit quicker than he did Cruz, and it didn't take him long. He sort of always had Cruz figured out, which was one of the most more unbelievable parts than anything about that fight last year. But I think Dillashaw in the exchanges will be a bit more hittable, or just hittable in general, not necessarily more hittable than Garbrandt, but the fact that Garbrandt hits harder makes that a disadvantage 100%. I don't really know what else to add here. I think it's a close fight. I think on paper and off, I think it does end up being a pretty close fight. I think it'll go to the judges. I think Garbrandt will probably take home 3 rounds, Dillashaw maybe 2. Maybe 4-1, but I'll lean 48-47 Cody Garbrandt to retain the UFC Bantamweight Championship. He's younger, and also one other thing, Dillashaw is, it's hard to say where he's training. He opened up a new gym with Mark Munoz and Cub Swanson, but opening up a new gym while training for what could be the biggest fight of your life isn't exactly. I don't know if that's a good move, and I don't know, his focus is definitely on Garbrandt, but it's just another thing to worry about having your own gym and all of that, especially opening it right as this fight is happening. So that doesn't help. Garbrandt, I just think this guy's on a different level. I mean, Dillashaw is fantastic. He's one of the best bantamweights in the world, and he always will be. But Garbrandt is sort of the new breed of bantamweights in a way. He's super explosive, and I think he'll be able to figure Dillashaw out more so than Dillashaw can figure Garbrandt out, which is a bit odd just because Garbrandt's a bit more straightforward. He hits hard, he comes forward, and he's quick, but Dillashaw has the footwork. But gut feeling is Cody Garbrandt by unanimous decision and still Bantamweight champion of the world. We move on to the UFC 217 main event, and what happens? Do we agree again? Or do we not? We will find out very shortly. George St-Pierre, Michael Bisping. Bisping's the champion. George St-Pierre, the challenger. Bisping is off a 1-year layoff. He last fought Dan Henderson in his first title defense. Prior to that, he, of course, upset Luke Rockhold, shocking the world and capturing the middleweight title, and kicked off what happens to be one of the worst title reigns ever in the UFC. On the other hand, St-Pierre has been out for 4 years. Quadruple what Bisping's been out. He last fought Johnny Hendricks, who is now, about to get knocked out by Paulo Borrachinha on the main card as well. He's been out. He took a hiatus. We thought he was done, retired. Dana White said so too.
Let's get to it. George St-Pierre is going to win. Well, I'm tired. We've been doing this for an hour and a half. We do need to get a little speedier with it because we.
Hey, this is a big card. Hour and a half on UFC Dansk isn't good, but for this we can accept. Main event: Michael Bisping, George St-Pierre, and new and still Jed. You already revealed it. Tell us why.
And new. I could be wrong. I won't be surprised if I'm wrong. If Michael Bisping's been fighting for 4 years and George St-Pierre hasn't. But I think it's a close fight. I think it's an interesting fight. And I sort of hate it, but we're here now, so that's fine. I think George St-Pierre can win on the feet with a jab and low kicks. Both of those have historically been pretty successful avenues of victory against Michael Bisping. Granted, Michael Bisping's added new tools. He's a better fighter than he was, 5 years ago. But I think those still have a lot of opportunity for success here. And I know Michael Bisping is a solid defender of takedowns. He's not a great defender of takedowns. And, Johnny Hendricks, when Johnny Hendricks didn't suck, George St-Pierre was able to take him down. And Johnny Hendricks, when he didn't suck, was a significantly better wrestler than Michael Bisping is. So I think George St-Pierre can get takedowns. I think that he can compete and win stages on the feet. I think he has a few more tools in the box, and I don't think Bisping's size advantage is going to manifest itself in that big of a way that matters. The real thing that the decider for me in this one is mostly that George St-Pierre didn't have to come back, and he could have come back in any number of ways against any number of opponents. He wanted this fight, and he is a guy who has cultivated his career with just down to the minute detail, microscopic precision is what he has taken his whole career. So I struggle to believe that he somehow is biting off more than he can chew with Michael Bisping, or that he didn't understand or, have a functional idea of how to win this fight, or feel that he was going to win this fight and be pretty justified in that belief. So if he comes back and looks like shit, okay, I'm not going to be stunned by it. But Michael Bisping went hammer and tongs with a 50-year-old Dan Henderson a year ago. George St-Pierre is not 50 and was a better fighter than Dan Henderson ever was. I think he has all the tools to compete, and it's just whether he can put them together in a functional way. If he doesn't, I won't be super surprised. But I think despite the long layoff, my gut still says it, so I got to go with it. George St-Pierre by decision.
Yeah, I guess I'm being a copycat in a way, but I have been thinking the same thing. I think Jed nailed it on the head. GSP could come back and look like absolute garbage, but I'm pretty much just basing his fighting style off what I think he could do against Michael Bisping's fighting style, and that's pretty much how Bisping predicted. GSP looking for the jab twice in a row and then shooting for a double leg, and Bisping, I guess he's been taken out a few times here and there, not so much recently. I think Henderson was able to get him down once in the fight, but that was pretty much it. Besides that, I couldn't tell you the last guy. Probably looking at the records, CB Dollaway, maybe in there a couple times. Definitely the fight that he had back with Tim Kennedy in 2014. That was a fight definitely where Kennedy was pretty much able to just wrestle with Bisping and win every single round, but Bisping was still able to land the better shots on the feet. Bisping could go in there and get a TKO over GSP depending on GSP's, cardio, depending on how his chin's going to be, since we haven't seen him fight in a while. Also, the fact that he's taken quite a bit of damage in his last few fights and the fact that his last fight was in November of 2013, a fight that he debatably lost to Johnny Big Rig Hendricks. I'm going to stick with GSP. Don't really want to talk too much about this one just because I feel like there's a lot of variables that could play a factor, and this is just kind of a toss-up fight overall just because, of course, as I mentioned, GSP, we haven't seen him fight in almost, I guess, about 4 years now, or how he's going to show up and what tools he's going to implement in the fight. But I think if he does what he usually does and what he did do when he was able to get victories back when he was the welterweight champion, I think he's going to be able to get a decision victory here pretty decisively over Bisping. But who knows? Bisping's striking abilities are pretty impressive. His takedown defense looks a lot more sound than what it used to be. And maybe Bisping can pull off, I wouldn't say a shocker, but a pretty impressive TKO over there over GSP. Definitely possible, but I'm going to stick with GSP by we'll go 49-46 decision across the board.
Well, Wes Riddle, two smart. I can't believe I just butchered that. Smart minds think alike. George St-Pierre, I got to go with GSP. And that means me and Wes have the exact same picks.
No, it doesn't. And we're going to deal with that in a second. First, give your breakdown, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do.
I probably – okay, well, I'm intrigued to hear what Jed has in mind. But, okay, so I am going with George St-Pierre to defeat Michael Bisping to claim the UFC middleweight championship. It's a close fight on paper only because GSP hasn't fought in 4 years. GSP could look like absolute crap, and I don't need to repeat that. Everybody knows that. Or he could look kind of like the GSP of old. And as Jed alluded to, I got to imagine that GSP doesn't need to come back. He has the money. He's smart, as far as we know, with his money. And he has movie roles on occasion and other things and sponsorships and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He doesn't need to come back, so I got to imagine that if the fact is he's coming back, he thinks he's going to do well. He wants it. He has the fire. And I have to imagine this won't be a washed-up GSP. This is going to be a GSP who, at least in his opinion, is ready to go and ready to get this middleweight title. On paper it's close. I wouldn't be surprised if St-Pierre dominates. I won't be surprised if Bisping pulls it off either. I think, the big deciding factor is going to be GSP's takedowns. I think on the feet, Bisping's size could give GSP some problems, but GSP is a very good striker too. His jab could cause Bisping some problems, his low kick as well, with Bisping being a bit of a taller man. Bisping only has one eye. Always got to include that as a disadvantage. GSP's the smarter fighter. He's fought better competition, I guess, although it's kind of hard to compare because Bisping's fought good guys too. Or he's beat better competition other than Bisping beating Luke Rockhold, which never will happen again. I think St-Pierre, I think he is able to grind out a decision win here. I don't think it'll be too pretty. I think he'll do what he has to do. I think Bisping probably takes a round. But I think St-Pierre, I think on the feet, this is pretty close. And then on the ground, I like St-Pierre to land a few takedowns here and there. Bisping, his takedown defense is good. It's pretty solid, and I'm sure he's been working on that because all he's been talking about is GSP wrestling at every press conference pretty much. But I still think St-Pierre can get Bisping's number there. And able to secure some takedowns here and there. So give me George St-Pierre by decision, probably 49-46, I think. In general, it'll be a pretty close fight. I think it'll be clear, not dominant necessarily, but I do like George St-Pierre quite a bit here to become the fourth ever fighter to be a two-division UFC champion, welterweight and middleweight, of course. Give me George St-Pierre, Canada's own and new unanimous decision over Michael Bisping. Now, Jed, how are we going to fix this issue? Wesley Riddle and I have the same picks. What are we going to do about it?
Well, if this was a competition with money on the line, all three of us would have the exact same picks. I being the gentleman and the scholar that I am, went out on a limb, picked an underdog in a fight that I thought was close to make it more interesting and dynamic for our group. You two are cowards. Both of you are going to have to pick one of your fights to change your pick on. So
I said third. I said we were 3 fights in. I said there's probably a fight I'm going to change. Give me Ayman Zahabi.
All right, there you go, Wes. What are you picking to change in? Hopefully not the Zahabi.
No,
fight.
Wes doesn't need to change because then
I'm not gonna. I don't think I should change just
Both
because I've had my picks in since October 31st.
Don't care. You need to change, Wes.
No. This one of us.
No. Because if Wes doesn't have to change, what if I don't want to use the Olynyk pick? What if I want the Blades pick? Wes has to also pick another one to change. All of us have to have one pick that didn't make us feel all the way happy, but
we have
for the sake of diversity, we all have to have one pick thrown out there. So Wes, give us one.
Although you legitimately are picking Olynyk.
No, I told you when I picked him that I was doing it just because I thought we were going to pick a lot of the similar stuff.
Okay, so just like when Wes picked Demon Maya.
Sure. I don't remember his reasoning there, but
he didn't like Colby Covington.
I literally said, I know Colby Covington's going to win this fight, but I'm just picking Maya because I do not want Colby to win.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just do one of those. Who don't you like?
All right. I'll do one. I'll do one of them again. But we know what my picks actually are.
Exactly. We know what our actual picks are, but who don't you like, Wes?
But for the sake of the show, I will save it by picking old Michael the Count Bisping over George St-Pierre because
if you win based on that pick too, you're going to be so happy.
And then I will give you 100% credit.
But then if GSP wins and he doesn't end up winning the pick,
I will say that was 100% not my fault and that I was forced into this.
Exactly. So it's all upside. It's all upside.
Going to the
it's all right. I'm fine either way.
I genuinely do think. I mean, I've been thinking about changing Damon Zahabi. I've been on Ayman this whole week ever since the fight was announced, and I literally didn't pick him because you guys didn't, and I figured you knew more about this fight than I did, but I don't think that's necessarily true. So I am picking Ayman Zahabi. I think, although slow, he might be a better striker. He has decent takedown defense, and Ramos needs to get it down, and I'm not sure that'll happen. So Ayman Zahabi by decision.
Good. It's interesting now. If Wes loses because of the GSP pick, there will be a big asterisk by it. We can debate it all at that point in time. But now it's fun and dynamic for all of us. So let's move on. This is your show, Nick. Do we do DraftKings or bonuses first?
Let's do bonuses and then underdog and then DraftKings.
All right. So I'm just going to do all the bonuses. I'll lead off here. My fight of the night wavered back and forth. You got a couple of solid options here with 3 title fights on the main card. Or on the card, but give me George St-Pierre versus Michael Bisping. I think it's going to be a close one. I'm predicting Colby Covington to get a Cody Garbrandt to get a knockout. So I don't think that's going to win fight of the night. Although I think that it's probably, if you looked at the odds, that's probably your front runner would be the Garbrandt-Dillashaw fight. But so give me Bisping GSP. I think it'll be a close one, maybe back and forth, and 5 rounds is always something interesting. So that's my fight of the night. My performance.
I think that's going to be one of the worst fights, but okay.
Oh man, my performances of the evening. We're all agreeing almost on who's getting what. So as far as wins, and I think we might have a lot of overlap here. I think OSP is gonna start Corey Anderson early, so you can chalk one up on the board for OSP for me. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm gonna pull OSP. I am gonna stick with Walt Harris. I think Walt Harris is gonna get a first round knockout over Mark Godbeer. But I will also throw – oh, man. Yeah, I guess I am. I'm just going to go OSP. OSP and Walt Harris. I think they're both getting early wins, so give me those as my performance bonuses. My underdog, all 3 of us are picking him, George Masvidal. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win outright. So definitely have – I think there's some other guys that are valuable, fair value underdogs. I think Olynyk is unjustly at plus 300. But give me George Masvidal because I absolutely think he's going to win that fight. So that's my bonuses. Wes, on you?
I'm gonna go. I'm glad you went with Walt Harris and OSP. I was definitely thinking about them, but I was kind of looking at a few others. I'm gonna give my fight of the night, which is what I've been thinking all alone. Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, I guess, is probably the front runner, as you mentioned, for that. But I do think if any other fight could be a fight of the night, I'd look at the first fight on the card. I think Zahabi Ramos could be a fantastic fight, one of the best to kick off a card, and one that could definitely get to a decision. But I would definitely keep your eye out for that one. I think that's definitely going to be a front runner as well. I'm going to give my two performances just to be different. Paulo Borrachina, I think he's going to be able to stop Johnny Hendricks. And then just to be different, I'm going to go with the other fighter that I guess you didn't pick, but could definitely get a stoppage. Ian Cutelaba, I think he's going to be able, as he's picked up so many finishes in the first round, but also under like 80 seconds, I think he's going to be able to get one here against Mikhail. So I'll take Ian Cutelaba for another performance. So those two, I will give my, I guess I'll just pick Jorge Masvidal as well, since we all pretty much agreed. If Ricardo Ramos was a underdog, is he an underdog? Do y'all know?
Hold on, so you're going no fight tonight?
My fight of the night's Garbrandt Dillashaw.
So then why are you naming four?
I thought you went underdog.
Oh.
Yeah, I was looking at underdog now, and I guess either Masvidal, but Ramos, you said, isn't an underdog.
Nope, he's a favorite.
I guess I don't mean to be repetitive, but I guess Jorge Masvidal is going to be my underdog pick as well. I mean, it makes the most sense, especially the fact that we all picked him. But I do think that he's going to be able to upset Stephen Thompson.
Okay. So remind me, your bonuses were you had Borrachina and Cutelaba. Who did you go fight tonight?
Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw.
Something is in the air. I have the identical bonuses and underdog pick. Cody Garbrandt, Dillashaw, fight of the night. Borrachina, Cutelaba, performances of the night. And Jorge Masvidal as my underdog pick.
All right, forget it. I'm going Amin Zahabi or Ricardo Ramos just because I've literally hyped that fight up and I want to be different because that's it. Okay. We know that's going to be a fight that could definitely contend for a fight of the night, and then we'll be like, wow, that definitely could have got a bonus, but they didn't give it the fight of the night because
me and Wes definitely have the same DraftKings team.
But
yeah,
I guess we'll get DraftKings.
I started thinking about that. I was like, holy shit, with all this overlap, like there's a really solid chance that all three of us have the exact same DraftKings team.
I like mine too.
I want one of y'all to go first because I'm afraid to say it.
Hold on. Before you go, how many champions or title fights do we have each?
I've got 3.
Wes?
On my DraftKings?
Yeah.
I've got 0.
What?
Wow, Wes has a way different DraftKings than I do.
I went completely different. Yeah. I'm not taking any champions on my DraftKings.
Wow. So I get to beat Wes this week at least. That's nice.
I have 3 champions too, and they're all the same as Jed. So
going to be the same.
Jed, yeah, ours. Okay, no, ours is going to be different because I have one guy you didn't pick.
No, I think we're going to have the same
that
team.
down real quick.
I think we're going to have the same team.
No,
why don't you lead? Because I think we're going to have the same team.
I guess I'll go ahead.
Hey, Wes, you go.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I didn't pick any champions because just because champions doesn't mean that they're going to get more points than the guys that aren't champions. So my DraftKings team,
does, but okay.
I made it up like this. I've got Jorge Masvidal because I think he'll be able to upset Stephen Thompson. I've got Joe Duffy because I think he's going to put on a pretty good striking clinic over James Vick. I've got Ricardo Ramos for the upset. I think he'll be able to, or not upset, but I think he'll be able to get a job done over Amin Zahabi. And then my 3 other picks, pretty confident in them all. I've got Mickey Gall, Walt the Big Ticket Harris, and Ian Cutelaba. I think they'll all get finishes. And I'm pretty confident that maybe four pretty confidently could get finishes on this.
Run it down one more time super quickly. So you have Cutelaba, you have Mickey Gall, Walt Harris, who else?
I've got Joe Duffy, Jorge Masvidal, and Ricardo Ramos to make up that team.
Interesting. It's not. It's a good team. I'm just.
Ramos is so cheap on DraftKings. I almost put him on my squad too.
It's cheap, and I thought that you guys were going to be picking champions, and I wanted to switch it up just because they're, like I said, just because they're champions doesn't mean they're going to get more points than some of these other guys. Because I'm pretty sure some of these other guys can get finishes, but I'm taking a risk in this because, especially when you look at the championship fights, they're 5-rounders, and I feel like they're going to be able to put up some points. But I wanted to make it a little bit different just for the fun of it, because I knew that if I went, because I thought too, if I went all champions, that I felt like a lot of us would do the same thing, which it sounds like we are. So one of you two can go ahead and get
Jed,
your pick.
I host the show, so that means you have to go before I do.
Okay, well, you and I are both going to share George St-Pierre, Cody Garbrandt, and Joanna Jacek.
That is correct.
All three of those are going to be on our team. I honestly think we're going to have the exact same squad because looking at my team, I also have George Masvidal. I'm fairly confident Masvidal is going to be on your squad as well. He's cheap and you're picking him to win outright, so he's got to make your squad as well. And then these other two are the only thing that I think could maybe be different, but I don't think it is. I have Walt Harris on my squad as well, and I have Curtis Razor Blades.
God damn it!
I thought we'd have the exact same picks. Am I right?
Same team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you all are boring. I'll see you all later. Thanks for tuning in.
I'll see if I can mix it up some, but I actually really like my squad a lot. So
I like mine too. Yeah,
I try. I'm gonna do what I can to try and get Ovince St. Preux in there, but that's the thing. For a minute, I had Ovince St. Preux in there, but I couldn't make it work because he cost so much. And so then I added Walt Harris instead, and I was like, oh, I guess I can just take Curtis Blades, and the money works out exactly perfectly. So I'll try and maybe get.
I have two teams just for what it's worth. I'm not changing mine because I like the second one that I'm doing for this show quite a bit better. But I initially had a team that shared 4 fighters: GSP and Jacek Garbrandt. So I never changed the champions. Always wanted those. I had Walt Harris, but instead of Jorge Masvidal and Curtis Blades, I had Oleinik and Johnny Hendricks. And
that's a bad team.
Yeah, so Johnny Hendricks probably going to get murked. And I was picking Wonder Boy up until you picked Jorge last night on the MMA Circus, and I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Damn it.
And yeah,
shouldn't have given that away.
Shouldn't have been my co-host. Oh, well. Okay, that does it for episode, what is this, 87 of Before the Battle, I believe. Yes, it is. Thank you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it for, of course, this great card, this big card. GSP's back. Bisping defends finally. Still not against a relevant middleweight contender, but whatever. Cody Garbrandt, Dillashaw, Joanna. Great card. Thank you all for watching. Jed, let everybody know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your MMA coverage, and anything else you got to plug. And feel free if you do figure out a different DraftKings team. All right, so you're not going to change, or are you?
I'll give it a look over and see, just because we do this for fun, and it's not fun if literally the best. It's just Wes versus one of us, essentially. Right. So I'll see if I can. I'll definitely change my team up some. I don't know what it'll be. It'll take me some time to do probably, but yeah, you can find my writing at MMAfighting.com. Check out there in about 7.5 hours. My morning report for Friday will go up. And then other than that, follow me on Twitter at Jed Meshew. And if you're at Twitter and you're feeling generous, go click on my profile. At the very top is a pinned link to donate money to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It's a research hospital for children dealing with cancer, battling cancer. That is one of the best causes that I know of in the entire world. I happen to be running a marathon on Saturday morning, so Saturday's a big day for me. I get to wake up at 6 a.m., go run 26.2 miles, go home, maybe take a nap, drink as many beers as I can physically put in my system, and then watch some fights. But before I do all that, I would love to get more money if possible, because it's such a good cause. So, click the link, throw $5, $10, $2. Every dollar helps. It's for kids with cancer. I don't know what else to say beyond that. That should be enough for you to do it. And thanks to everybody who's donated, Nicholas included, to help me reach the goal. And I hope I survive the marathon and can talk shit about how I kicked y'all's asses in both picks and DraftKings on Saturday evening.
Yeah, if you don't survive the marathon, you won't be watching this card, so that kind of sucks too. But I don't know. Wes, let everybody know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your MMA coverage as well, and anything else you got to plug.
I wanted to say too, I retweeted Jed's link, so you can find it on my Twitter as well. If you're
don't go to Jed's Twitter.
Wes Riddle.
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
You're a good egg, Wes Riddle.
I appreciate it. I got everybody's back.
Wes is just stealing your thunder. He doesn't mind promoting the charity, but he doesn't want clicks going to your Twitter.
I don't need the thunder, man. I'm in it for the charity. Like, if you want to donate money to St. Jude's outside of my link,
everybody
just give them money. They deserve it. They're good people.
Giving money to kids with cancer is a bit more important than Twitter followers.
If I had
only very close, it's a close battle.
If I had the money, if I had the funds right now to donate, I would. So I feel like the best I can do is at least share the link. And Jed's a great friend, and so is Nick, of course. But since Jed's doing this, I wanted to share. No, it's the fact that you're not doing anything for St. Jude's, so therefore I'm supporting Jed as he's currently doing stuff for St. Jude's.
Nick,
if you were, I would definitely support the link. But since you're not, I'm not going to support you. I support St. Jude's. St. Jude's a little more. All right, I'm moving on.
I'm going to go prep for my marathon tomorrow. Never run more than 10K in my life, but
if you start, Nick, I got you. I promise. Cross my heart. You can find me on Twitter at All That MMA. That's where I do all my social media communication. Definitely feeling a lot more recently talking about mixed martial arts, so feel free to hit me up with any DMs. And there on Twitter. Plan on doing maybe a Periscope live stream at some point soon. I like using that app as well. Besides that, I'm going to try to get back on MMA Sucker, do a little bit more writing here and there if I can sometime soon. I've been behind on it, and I definitely am feeling a lot more motivated to catch up and try to get back on the writing side of things. So I'm also going to UFC Norfolk. So if anybody's going to UFC Norfolk, which happens to be next weekend, Dustin Poirier and Anthony Pettis, I'll be at the card. I'm going to try to get there on Friday morning. Not sure about what my plans are for the day, but I definitely would love to meet up with some people if you plan on attending, and try to enjoy that fight card. So I'm looking forward to that. Besides that, that's pretty much it for me. As I said, all the MMA on Twitter, and had a blast talking about this card. Great card, and looking forward to this weekend.
And if anybody's attending UFC Winnipeg and trying to survive the native 40-degree temperatures we get in December and January, hit me up. I'll be there. But I know all of you will avoid that at all costs, of course. Unless you're stupid and live in Winnipeg. All right. You guys can find me on Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. I've actually done a number of interviews this past week, and I did not plug them on the MMA Circus, meant to, but forgot. On Sunday, so a few days ago, I met Ken Shamrock, UFC Hall of Famer, MMA legend. Right beside my school, actually, the school I attend to, right beside it is a hotel. It happened to be the hotel Ken Shamrock was staying at while he was in town promoting his new comic book. And I went down and had a chat with him. So that is on this YouTube channel. You can find it very easily under the interview playlist. So please go check that out. I would really appreciate it. I also talked to the UFC Sao Paulo big winners, Derek Brunson and Colby Covington, after their wins last weekend. Go check out those interviews. And just today, I talked to UFC lightweight contender Justin Gaethje about his upcoming fight against Eddie Alvarez and Ultimate Fighter 26 and much more. That it will be up tomorrow. I wanted it up tonight, but we ended up talking on before the battle for quite a while, so that won't happen. That is pretty much it, other than my other podcast, The MMA Circus. I hosted each and every week with Andrew Lawrence. Well, almost each and every week. He was doing well, but yesterday we brought Jed Meshew back on as our guest co-host. Andrew was out, and we talked about this card, not as much as we did tonight. And we also talked about UFC Sao Paulo, Covington, the controversy, and a bit more as well. So go check it out. Also launched a new podcast, Beyond Combat, recorded episode 2 last night as well. Had on MMAsucker.com managing editor Nick Godin. We talked about his passion for covering and watching hockey, and also his new internship with the Arizona Coyotes Foundation, which is of course an NHL team down in Phoenix. That is pretty much it. Thank you all for watching. We really do appreciate it. And enjoy the fights on Saturday night. Jed, are you not going to do your thing?
No, I was going to let you guys end it, but love you guys.